Should the average user buy the cheapest M4 Mac Mini? There are a ton of videos looking at the M4 Mac Mini from the perspective of a photographer, a creator, or a video editor, but those users typically have very specific needs. So today we're going to talk about whether the cheapest M4 Mac Mini is a good value for the average user. Now this year we have more configuration options than ever before, so let's talk about the new design, what you get when you buy, which configuration option you should get, and what else you need. Now, after years of maintaining the same form factor, the M4 Mac Mini, which starts out at $600, looks noticeably different. It's almost comically small at only 5 by 5 by 2 inches, literally just wide enough to fit all of the I/O on the back. And while it does have a smaller footprint than the previous model, I'd be surprised if that alone would be a deciding factor for the majority of buyers. Now, having said that, it is impressively small and elegant, with the exception of the power button, which is conveniently placed on the bottom, like some sort of practical joke. But all kidding aside, I very rarely need to use the power button because I just mostly put it to sleep, and this would mostly be a consideration for users who have their Mac Mini under some type of desk shelf. Now, when it comes to unboxing, when you buy an M4 Mac Mini, you're getting the Mac Mini itself, you're getting a power cable, some paperwork, and no Apple sticker this year. So that's it. There's no keyboard, no mouse, and no trackpad. Now, personally, I like that because I want to choose my own accessories and I don't want to pay for accessories that I don't plan on using. If we look at something like the iMac, which does come with a Magic Keyboard and a Magic Mouse, those accessories look great and perfectly match the iMac, but I'll always choose a mechanical keyboard over the Magic Keyboard, and like I always say, the Magic Mouse is the Magic Mouse. I do have to point out that if you like using a trackpad, the Magic Trackpad is fantastic and I highly recommend getting one. Now, one of my favorite upgrades this year is that just like with the Mac Studio, we're getting ports on the back and the front. Starting with the back, with the regular M4 Mac Mini, you get 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports that are rated up to 40 gigabits per second, an HDMI port, and a 1 gigabit Ethernet port, which you can upgrade to 10 gigabit for $100. And that may be something that you want to do if you plan on using a NAS, and I'll talk more about this in just a moment. Now, on the front, we're getting 2 USB-C ports that are rated for up to 10 gigabits per second and a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. Now, this is a much better design than the previous model because you can easily plug and unplug wired headphones, and you can use the ports on the front to quickly connect and disconnect external SSDs or any other accessories that you share with other devices. Now, personally, I would love to have an SDXC card reader on the front, but I know that most typical users aren't going to care about that, so it's not really a big deal for them. Now, in terms of setup, everything is extremely simple. If this is your first Mac, just follow the instructions on the screen and you'll be ready to go in a few minutes. But one thing that I do want to mention is that I needed a wired keyboard and a mouse to get through this setup. Now, my keyboard can be used with a USB-C cable, so that wasn't really an issue, but the only wired mouse that I had was a USB-A one, and then I needed a USB-C to USB-A adapter to get it to work. And in terms of configuration, there are 2 versions of the chips. We've got the regular M4 chip, and then we've got the M4 Pro. Now, your average user should 100% get the regular M4 chip because it's already way more processing power than they're going to need. Now, the M4 Pro Mac Mini obviously has a more powerful chip. It can also support 3 6K monitors instead of 2 6K monitors and 1 5K monitor on the regular M4 Mac Mini, and the Pro model has Thunderbolt 5 ports instead of Thunderbolt 4, but none of this is going to matter to a typical user. Basically, if you don't know that you need those things, you don't need them. So the base M4 Mac Mini, the one that you get for $599, comes with 256 gigabytes of internal storage and 16 gigabytes of unified memory. And this is where things get a little bit tricky. None of the M4 Mac Minis are upgradable, so whatever configuration that you're choosing now is what you're going to have forever. I love that Apple doubled the base unified memory, so we're now starting with 16 gigs instead of 8, and that's going to work fine for anyone who's using this for school, for basic multitasking, for browsing with plenty of tabs, essentially any type of task that a typical user is looking to do, and that includes Apple Intelligence. Now, if you're curious, unified memory is similar, but at the same time different from traditional RAM. Just imagine super fast and efficient memory that allows apps to quickly share data with the CPU, GPU, and neural engine, and Apple says that you could do more with unified memory than you could with the same amount of traditional RAM. Now, moving on to internal storage, 256 gigabytes is fine if you're mostly using cloud-based apps, if you're browsing the web and streaming content, which is what many users do. If you need additional internal storage, you can upgrade to 512 gigabytes, but that's going to cost you an additional $200, which is kind of crazy. Now, you can technically go all the way up to 2 terabytes on the regular M4 M4 Mac Mini and 8 terabytes on M4 Pro, but I wouldn't because the cost is significant. Now, you may have heard that just like with the previous models, the 256 gigabyte chip comes with a slower SSD than the higher storage options, which is true, and we can see that when we compare read and write speeds. But ultimately, you should ask yourself if this actually matters to you. And for someone who's looking at the cheapest M4 Mac Mini, the answer is no. I've used both configurations and I haven't noticed a meaningful difference. So I would only spend the money if you actually need the storage and not just for the faster speeds. In both cases, startup time was still super fast. I always have tons of tabs open in my browsers. I use Messages, Notes, Photos, Photoshop, Premiere Pro, and both models were fast. And I'll very quickly cover the differences in the performance section, but again, one thing to remember about this Mac Mini, and this is true for any Mac or MacBook with an M chip, is that none of them are upgradable. So you only have the amount of storage you got when you bought them. What I've been doing for years is using a NAS, or a network attached storage, like this Ugreen NAS Sync DXP 4800 Plus. Think of it like cloud storage, but it's only yours and you're using your own hard drives. This one has 4 bays with a maximum storage capacity of 112 terabytes. Setup is super easy, so it's very beginner friendly, and it works with macOS, Windows, iOS, Android, smart TVs, and even has a web interface, so you can access it from all of your devices. There's an AI album assistant that classifies and stores images, letting you easily find pictures of your pets and create albums for people, places, animals, etc. File transfer is super fast, and you can actually give access to family or team members if you're collaborating on a project. So stop worrying about storage on your desktop, laptop, phone, or tablet, and check out the link in the description for a discount on the Ugreen NAS Sync DXP 4800 Plus, and thank you to Ugreen for sponsoring this portion of the video. Now, going back to performance, I'm only going to give you a very high level overview because the average user doesn't need to waste their time looking at a ton of benchmark tests. The M4 chip comes with a 10-core CPU with 4 performance cores that are designed to handle processing intensive tasks, and then 6 efficiency cores that can handle less demanding tasks and at the same time preserve power. Now, one of the advantages of the M4 Pro is that you can configure it with 8 or 10 performance cores, and you're able to get even more out of your Mac Mini. Now, for your typical user, the regular M4 chip is already more powerful than what they're going to need, and it should still be plenty of processing power for the next 5 to 7 years. So what I want you to do is make sure that you have enough internal storage for the foreseeable future, then keep in mind that you can install larger apps on an external SSD, and again, get more storage for less money. Now, the Mac Mini does include an active cooling system, or a fan, and just like with the Mac Studio, it blows the air out of the bottom of the Mac Mini, and it's very quiet. Now, realistically speaking, it very rarely turns on, and it was really just when I ran super intensive benchmarks that I got it to ramp up. All right, so now I want to talk about some of the accessories that you're going to need if you end up buying a Mac Mini. Now, I'm also working on a full accessories video where I'll give you all of my recommendations. So for a keyboard, right now I'm using the Keychron Q4 Pro. I got the red and white variant, and I just love the sound of typing on a mechanical keyboard. For a mouse, I use a Logitech MX Master 3S for Mac. I've been using this line of mice from Logitech for as long as I can remember. This mouse is extremely comfortable, and I can pair it with up to 3 devices and then switch between them by pressing the button on the bottom. Now, as far as monitors, for a single monitor setup, I'm using the Apple Studio Display because this is also the setup that I use with my Mac Studio. It's definitely not a cheap monitor, so it's not really the one that I recommend to the average user, but the display itself is absolutely amazing, and it has good speakers, and also really like how it looks. For a 3-monitor setup, I'm using the BenQ PD2725U, which is a 4K monitor that is specifically designed to work with Mac, and my full accessories video will have even more options. Now, the Mac Mini does have a speaker, but for anything other than system alerts, or if you just want the best sound, I would definitely get dedicated speakers. I'm using the Audio Engine A2 Plus in white. So at the end of the day, should the average user buy the cheapest M4 Mac Mini? If you're a basic to mid-level user, or a student who needs a super tiny and extremely powerful desktop, or if you want the cheapest way to get into the Apple ecosystem, you absolutely can't beat the base M4 Mac Mini's price to performance ratio at $600. I would still recommend thinking about the internal storage and either getting a NAS, which you can access from any device, and you can also quickly connect to it when you get a new device, or get yourself an external SSD, and really only upgrading the internal storage if you absolutely need to. Now, of course, if you're looking for an even more powerful chip, if you want additional processing power, better GPU performance, faster memory bandwidth, more capable ports, and better external display support, then you should check out the M4 Pro Mac Mini. Now you should watch this comparison, click on my face to subscribe. You know what I always say, buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck, and see you soon.